Hi, welcome to the latest of the Grand Ventures CEO Founder Series. I'm here with Tom McGrath, the CEO of iink Payments. We're here at the Egypt Valley Country Club here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, for our annual LP event. And Tom was gracious enough to join us here today. And looking forward to having him meet all of our LPs. So iink Payments is a company that Grand Ventures invested in last year into its seed round. We led their October 2022 seed round. Tom, I'll let Tom get into the company a little bit, but essentially, iink Payments is a company that brings together homeowners, business owners, insurance companies, and contractors. Thanks for joining us, Tom. Love to learn a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anthony. Yeah, I guess a little bit about myself. As you mentioned, CEO and co-founder here at iink Payments. I've always really loved startups and building things. Was doing startup weekends and hackathons probably since I was 13 years old, and had pretty high conviction that that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Got myself a degree in entrepreneurship and corporate innovation, and never looked back, and been building companies and doing this type of stuff ever since.
That's awesome. Where are you from, Tom?
I grew up in Connecticut, actually.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So tell us a little bit about the catalyst of iink and why did you join the company?
Sure. So my two co-founders, Ryan Holiday and Ken Lawler, they were actually restoration professionals down in Florida, living the problem that we solve for to today. And ultimately, they had been working with a couple of clients who were just effectively displaced from their homes for over 6 months for the problem that we were trying to solve for. And effectively, they said that enough was enough, and they wanted to build a solution for this. And so they had very deep domain expertise into the problems, and the different inefficiencies and bottlenecks that existed, but not necessarily how do you build a scalable technology solution around this to serve the masses. And so it was kind of the perfect storm of our two worlds coming together, where they identified this very unsexy domain problem, had a lot of the expertise, and then myself and a couple of other people from a startup that I had started before kind of came together to solve this problem. The old saying goes that Silicon Valley entrepreneurs oftentimes just solve Silicon Valley problems because they're not seeing these types of unmet needs in these kind of very niche industries.
Yeah.
And so, pun intended, given the storm work we do, perfect storm of that world coming together.
Yeah. Do you think this is a really interesting company? We're going to get into it more. Do you think this? I don't think it's an accident that it formed not on not in Silicon Valley. It didn't
Mhm.
form in Silicon Valley. I don't think that's an accident. What your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when you look at storm restoration, there's a very high concentration of storms in the southeast, so the problem is most prolific in that area. And I think for that reason, if you truly want to understand the problem so that you can build a robust solution, being in the heat of it and where it's happening often, and being around those customers and seeing those problems regularly is how you build any great product. Is having a great degree of empathy and understanding and data to build great solutions.
Yeah. Okay. We like to think entrepreneurship is like climbing a mountain range. What have been some of the peaks and valleys along the way for you, Tom?
Sure. I mean, obviously, most recent in my head is fundraising,
Mm.
and as we have been in the process of raising our Series A at the moment, we actually received several offers, and early on, I was told that I should take the first offer, and just given the current funding environment and everything that had happened with Silicon Valley Bank. And I had some investors who, I had to say, we're not going to take it. We're going to push for more. We think the company's worth more. And so, the valley, I guess, so to speak, in that one was we're in a terrible fundraising environment at the time, but we had such belief in the company that even though we turned it down and took that risk, we ended up getting a valuation that was effectively 12 million more than what we were originally offered. And so that would have been the peak
Yeah.
out of the valley, just as a singular example, I guess. But I would imagine for any entrepreneur, fundraising is definitely a roller coaster ride.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great story. What surprised you when either when you came to the company or over your time in the company? Like, what was a big something that surprised you? Maybe about the company, the segment that you play in.
Sure.
Um,
What really surprised me is there are a lot of great businesses, restoration contractors, even just regular retail renovation contractors, and I was surprised at the lack of financial services, products, tools, and even just general business education that these individuals have. And I think that there's a really big opportunity to, service this part of the market, provide them more with education because, they're effectively building a startup, but a lot of them, they didn't go to Harvard Business School or got a
Yeah,
business degree from, the top 10 business school in the US. And so I think there's a big gap in which we can really help accelerate the growth of these businesses. And in fact, at Inc., we've had customers who've come to us and said, Tom, I was doing $1 million a year when we started with you. I'm doing 2 million now, and a big piece of what we do is educating people on how to be financially savvy and grow the business.
got it. So classic story, but underserved market.
Hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Tell me what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Sure. So what gets me out of bed in the morning, and also probably what keeps me up at night, the twofold answer is actually our customers. So I think that for myself and also a lot of the people that work at Inc, why we've come up and solved a big problem, and there's obviously a lot of money to be made. There's a pretty big societal impact to what we're doing. I've had customers call us and say, Tom, my kid, he's 12 years old. He was crying every single day for the last 2 weeks because all he wanted to do was go home, get back into his home. And so the fact that we were able to help speed up the restoration of that property, get that young child back in home in a place where he felt safe and comfortable, could play with his toys instead of being stuck at a Motel 6 after a big hurricane or whatever the case may be. Um, you know, the story I told you about that business owner who came to us that I was doing $1 million a year, started with you guys, now I'm doing 2 million. But on the flip side of that, we're also dealing with people's money, right? And that is a very, very sensitive subject for a lot of people. So we always need to provide the highest level of service. There are some products out there where you can mess up a little bit, I feel like, and someone's like no harm, no foul, like your email marketing tool doesn't work for a couple days. But when it comes to money, people really care,
Sure.
and so we have to perform at a very, very high level.
Yeah, it makes sense. Um, what's been your biggest, struggle or learning or aha moment as a CEO?
Yeah, I would say so. When I started my first company out of college, I kind of had the mentality of I want to do everything, and then I think I can do everything, and I want to maintain as much ownership as I possibly can of the company. And I think that as I've matured, I've realized, and a saying that we have at Inc. is, "Would you rather be king or would you rather be rich?" And understanding that I can't do everything. Those things, certain things need to be delegated out, and you're going to have a much higher probability of success if you surround yourself with a team of people who are strong in the individual areas that you're strong in, just effectively acknowledging your weaknesses as well.
Got it. Um, you know, w- do you have a mistake or like I like to think most portfolio CEOs I talk to basically tell me a version of like they learn way more from their mistakes than they do from their successes. Do you have some example of that? Something you learned the hard way along the way?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back, I guess, to that question you just asked, where like this was again for a company before Inc. But I effectively was trying to build social media analytics software using image and facial recognition, where you could get demographic profiles off people's like Instagram and Facebook photos. Um, and like I said, originally tried to do it myself. I tried to sell into the social media companies, the brands, and the agencies. And what I wish I would have done is actually just brought someone on board who already had that Rolodex and had those relationships. Because while I was able to get them, there was a big lead time of me having to develop and create those relationships versus just getting somebody who could say, "Hey, Bob, like
Yeah.
it's TWA or CCA agency or whatever. Can we get the meeting?" And so that's something that I've definitely learned and implemented at Inc. is really bringing in people where I don't have the connections, I don't have the network or the relationships or the
Mm.
core competency to really help supplement and make sure that the business is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, makes sense. This might be repetitive, but is there one soft skill you learned along the way that's been really important to your sort of evolution success?
Yeah, I would say that it's empathy and just general emotional intelligence. I think that within my business, one thing that I've learned, especially when you're dealing with people's money, is the old saying goes, "You catch more flies with honey than vinegar." So when someone's yelling at me or upset, or someone's even done something wrong that I'm upset with, the first thing that I do is I try to meet them at their level and I'm like, "I understand, why you did this, or how you're interpreting things, and I get that. Like I see you, I hear you. Here's where I am. How can we meet in the middle?" And I think that's really served us well versus bringing egos into it. Like that's one of the things that I've had to learn is kill the ego
Yeah.
and just be as empathetic as possible, because people automatically, when you attack them, they get defensive,
Yeah.
right? And that's not going to be productive for anyone.
Yeah, kill the ego. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Um, what's one of your sort of non-negotiables in business or life?
So one of our core values at Inc. is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so if there's any sort of change or initiative that we want done, and even in my own personal life, right? If I want to go lose weight, or if I want to achieve some sort of fitness goal, or whatever the case may be, I have to have a mechanism for measuring it, so that I can manage it effectively towards reaching that goal, course correct, augment, supplements as needed. And so that's something that is really written into the DNA. I think we've invested a lot in analytics and data, and using that. And that's one of the ways that we're also able to eliminate ego from decisions. Because I go, you can say this, you can say that, but here's the data; it's undeniable.
Yeah, yeah. Um, great. What are you most excited about right now? Uh, you know,
Yeah. So small, I guess maybe kind of big thing is, we're opening up an office in Denver. So we've been remote since the inception of the company, and this is really the first time, and also probably the first time in 3 years I've physically been in an office. So I'm pretty excited to get to design an office and bring people in, and really do a lot of that culture building.
yeah. So, my presumption is that means you're kind of taking a hybrid approach to sort
We
of,
are.
can you talk a bit about that's been a journey for a lot of our companies, post pandemic.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the hybrid approach is, we're going to have two mandatory days, Tuesday, Thursday, and then you have a floating day, of which you can choose Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. So, got a little too much fun on the weekend, you want to take it easy Monday, you can. We're in Denver, you want to get out to the slopes a little bit earlier, and, wake up early on Friday, but, not have to go into the office. We think that providing that flexibility and that work-life balance um, will pay off. And, we've done the research, and, when you look at some of the most successful companies out there, they have people who work remotely for them, but they usually do have a pretty big physical presence. I mean, Apple's campus, Facebook's
Yeah,
campus, like those top-notch companies, they all have some sort of physical presence, and whether it's remote or hybrid, there's usually that element there.
got it. Sort of the follow on, like, what's next for Inc? What's the next big thing?
Yeah, so there's really three buckets that we're focusing on. So one is generally scalability and automation within the software. So we still have some kind of almost like service like elements to what we do, because we haven't fully productized them. So in order for us to go from the 300 so customers that we have today on a monthly active basis to, say, 10,000, right? We want to be able to make sure that our margins are maintaining consistent and hopefully getting better, but we can't linearly scale that human component with it. So my background and my CTO's background is pretty strongly rooted in artificial intelligence, machine learning, workflow automation. So we're very focused there. The second piece is that we're very focused on expanding the ACV of the customer. So, our larger vision really is to become this vertical operating system, almost neobank for the restoration space. And we're moving millions and millions of dollars every day. This month alone, I think we'll move close to 70 million.
Mm.
And the things that people want to do with that next is, well, I want to spend it on a debit card to buy gas for my F-350. I want to go buy materials for the property that I'm restoring. I want to do payroll. And I think adding that banking as a service layer allows us not only to monetize the inbound of, we've solved this problem of getting their money out faster, but how do we actually help them spend it in the
Yeah.
ways that they need to?
Mm.
So excited for that. And then, historically, we've had a very kind of like one-to-one go-to-market strategy. We do digital marketing, where somebody might get a Facebook ad that says, hey, dealing with slow insurance claim payouts, or my salesperson will cold prospect. But we're very focused on investing in channel partnerships, where there's individuals who have these large networks of contracts or a funnel to get them, so that once we have the scalability and automation in a good place, 10,000 people could come on, and we can also monetize them in those additional ways through the new products and revenue.
Got it. How big can Inc get? How big is the vision, Tom?
Yeah. So what I always say is that we sit between the three of the largest industries in the United States. We're moving information and money between insurance carriers, banks, and construction. And I think that, given the size of the markets and the money that's being moved, I think that we have the opportunity actually to be one of the largest fintechs in the United States.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's awesome. If you don't mind, Tom, I'd like to kind of shift to some sort of more fun questions.
Sure.
How about we start here? What book are you currently reading? It's on your Kindle right now.
Yeah. So when I took the flight here, I'm reading a book called Raising Men It's a book written by Navy SEALs on lessons that they learned in a duty that they wanted to pass on to their kids.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Sounds interesting. Um, what's a typical Sunday look like for you, Tom?
Sunday is usually a maintenance day, getting ready for the week. But if I do something fun, I like to ride my motorcycle. Currently working on my pilot's license, got about 40 hours, so a little bit of an adrenaline junkie in that regard. If you didn't pick up on that, but yeah, that's usually I find those things very relaxing and calming, actually, despite the dangerous nature of them.
So, if you were to look back when you were a kid, what what did you want to be when you grew up, Tom?
Sure. So I wanted to be two things, and then I've realized an entrepreneur allowed me to be both. One was an inventor. So I actually used to have one of those little black and white composite notebooks where I would do all these little drawings and inventions. And then very ambitiously, I wanted to be the president of the United States. And that's just generally because I loved working with people and inspiring them. And I realized, well, an entrepreneur allows you to be an inventor, but also motivate and inspire people to execute on those products or those companies that you're building on. So I remember it was like something like eighth grade. I had that moment where I was like, oh, wait, I can kind of do both.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how many we've done this interview series. It's more than a few times I've heard CEOs say, "When I was a kid, I want to be president of the United States."
Uh-huh.
I don't think I don't think that's an accident, by the way. Um, interesting. What's something just a few people know about you? Something you're comfortable sharing anyway.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think I told Kelly here recently that my nickname is Treehouse Tom. So in high school, I took what's the my parents, most parents will say, hey, the kind of the phrase like not under my roof. I took
Uh-huh.
that very seriously. And so I built a double-decker treehouse in my backyard. We had Wi-Fi, air conditioning,
How old
electricity.
were you?
I was probably 16.
Wow.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad was a carpenter.
Okay.
So, I just would go take his tools and the extra wood from old jobs and bring it all together.
That's awesome. What was your last best vacation?
My last best vacation was I used to live in Boston before I moved out to Denver about 2 years ago. And before I left, I went to this campground up in Vermont. It's called Chittenden Brook. And I just went by myself with my dog and just spent a couple days just hiking in the woods,
Oh,
very
nice.
quiet, swimming in the watering holes and the rivers and stuff in the brook. It was very peaceful, kind of a resetting right before a big journey of coming out to Denver.
Yeah, that sounds great. Last one. What's at the top of your playlist right now?
I really enjoy Machine Gun Kelly, who I think actually might be from Michigan, or he's from Cleveland, one of the two. But he's from around here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, great. Thanks for joining us for this CEO interview series, Tom. Again, thanks for joining us at this event, and good luck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.